So, Adam, you've mentioned Reddit, and I think that for a lot of people, Reddit is not a channel that they're commonly thinking about as a lead source. So, I'm curious why you're recommending that for a lot of founders.
So yeah, like 50, 60% of my customers are coming from Reddit, mostly because there's a huge group of people there who are starting their own companies or a lot of software developer and product folks who built their own thing and then they want to go actually promote it and start making money off of it. A lot of folks who are taking side projects there and asking for advice. It's because they go there to ask advice for like everything too. Like they're not just looking for marketing advice, they're not just looking for product advice, they're going to like, 5, 6, 7 different subreddits to ask for accounting advice, of course, marketing and product and development and software and things like that. It's a pretty interesting spot to be.
The other question, as I'm thinking about finding an audience, is you talked about obviously finding the audience where your customers are hanging out.
Mhm.
But I am curious, like there are a lot of communities that are private communities where your audiences generally hang out. Do
Mhm.
you have any advice on how to find some of these private communities where your audience is hanging out?
Yeah, so that's the Hive index. That's where to find those. I check the Hive index probably once a week to see what gets added new on there. And then I just create a list. I have a list of about 50 communities for us internally at Marketing for Founders that we want to, get into in the next, year or so. At any given time, we're active in like 10 of them because we just don't have, it's pretty much impossible to be active in 50 communities at once. So you have to kind of prioritize. And once you feel that you've reached your limit in one of them, or you just want to kind of move on to see what's new, you can do that. One thing though is like I make sure you're not going in there guns blazing with like your product. Some of them you can, like you have, and they'll tell you like, yeah, go over in the self promo section. But if you go in there guns blazing, two things are gonna could happen. One, you could get banned because they don't want people being super salesy everywhere. The second thing is they're gonna say, hey, if you want to advertise, it costs $1,000 or something, you'll start getting charged. They'll want to charge you to sponsor a newsletter or something because a lot of these communities are money making operations for the people who own them. And if you're going in there, selling your product, they're going to want a little piece of that.
As you're working with founders through Marketing for Founders,
Mhm.
before they start identifying and being intentional about an audience, like how are they even targeting in the first place?
Well, they're oftentimes not targeting in the first place. What they're doing is they're saying, I want to talk to developers, or I want to talk to product managers, or I want to talk to salespeople. That is an idea generally of the type of person you want to talk to, but that is not even close to what I would consider targeting because what kind of salespeople are you talking to? What kind of companies do they work at? Are they the only salesperson in the company? Are they one of 1,000 people in a sales company? Like, are you selling into Salesforce? If so, then why were you talking to the salespeople? They don't have the ability to buy your product. There's 10 people up the chain. Now, if you're talking to Marketing for Founders, you want to sell to us, we've got one salesperson. That person can make the decision and lay down the credit card. So that's a totally different buyer. So you really need to target much more specifically than just, I want to talk to salespeople. Also, another huge mistake that I see, and I'd actually say this is the most common targeting mistake I hear, is at the end of who you want to talk to, you say, but really anybody could use our product. And that starts to introduce this thought process of like, more people, more people, more people. And the more people I talk to, the more people are going to buy my product. And that's not necessarily true because if you start telling people your product's for everybody, they're going to say, well, I don't need something that's for everybody. I need something that's for me right now, that's built to fix my problem.
So, how are you helping founders think through kind of that, again, identification of this is the exact audience
Mhm.
based on the exact problem that I'm solving?
So I walk them very specifically through a thought exercise. It usually consists of maybe like 20 minutes of me just like drilling and asking questions, but you can kind of repeat for yourself, write down a bunch of questions, or even write down who you are and how you like would categorize yourself as a worker or as a buyer of a product. And you can start to suss out your own. So start with, what is the title of the people you're selling to? Cool. Very easy, right? I'm selling to head of sales, or I'm selling to salespeople. Then what's their seniority? Well, we want directors and above. So we're selling to directors and VPs of sales. Okay. How many people do they manage? Well, we're selling to directors and VPs of sales who manage a team of 3 or less salespeople. Then what's the next thing is, well, what problem are they having? They have less than 3 salespeople, and the problem is they can't handle all of the outbound that needs to be done. So now you have a full stream of exactly who you're going to talk to, what conditions that need to be met for them to actually be a real customer for you, then what problems you're having. The next step is to dig into what kind of company they are, right? Because how many directors of sales and VPs of sales that have 3 or less salespeople under them are there in the world? In these companies, there's tons of them. There's probably hundreds of thousands of them. So you're going to want to be specific. I want to talk to software companies. Still probably a lot of directors of sales that meet this in software companies. So what kind of software company do you want to talk to? Well, I want software companies who are doing this specific thing. Like they have a release cycle on their app. They're releasing new app updates weekly. Cool. So director of sales at companies who have release weekly or something like that, and the sales team wants to use those releases to do more outbound. That kind of thing is where you're going to start finding like a lot more specific. You can get that down to a few hundred people potentially, and then you know exactly what to say. And it's very easy to message a couple hundred people. At that point, you're good to go, and you can start messaging them. But you can keep using that thought exercise over and over again. Find more problems that they're having. Other questions is, where else do they hang out? What kind of TV do they, or what kind of content do they consume? Things like that.
So you just touched on content, which I think is probably one of the most critical things as we think about marketing. So how do you recommend people actually start to think through their content creation and how they organize their content?
In the next episode, we're going to go into how founders can come up with and organize their content.